I just watched a TV series called People Magazine investigates about the 2005 murders of Brenda Groene, her 13-year-old son, Slade Groene, 9-year-old son, Dylan Groene, and Brenda's live-in boyfriend, Mark Mackenzie, as well as the kidnapping of Brenda's 8-year-old daughter, Shasta Groene. I have read a lot of true crime books, listened to many true crime podcasts, and watched various true crime documentaries, and I have never found myself crying in absolute horror as I have been since watching Shasta Groene talk about what that evil monster Joseph Duncan did to her and her family. This case was all over the news back in 2005. As Brenda, her boyfriend and son were all found bludgeoned to death in their home. And the two youngest children, Dylan and Shasta, had been kidnapped. Shasta has never spoken publicly about her ordeal until now, and her story had me in tears. I feel traumatized just hearing what happened to her. I cannot even begin to fathom the hell that Shasta has lived through. Shasta spoke about how her mom woke her up in the middle of the night crying and telling Shasta someone was in the house and he wanted 'em all in the living room. Joseph Duncan, a registered sex offender who started offending as a teenager and who spent the majority of his life in prison, had seen Shasta and her 9-year-old brother playing in their yard and stalked the family for several nights before breaking into their house. Shasta and Dylan were tied up and placed in the yard, while Duncan used a framing hammer to murder the family. Shasta recounted how she watched as her 13-year-old brother, Slade, came out of the house with blood all over himself, and how Duncan proceeded to hammer him to death in front of Shasta. She said she thought he died looking into her eyes. Duncan proceeded to take Shasta and Dylan into the woods, and had them read and recite the Lord's Prayer while he raped them. He sexually tortured both of them for a month. He took pictures and videos of the torture. Duncan promised the kids if they caught a squirrel they would get to go home. Dylan eventually caught a squirrel, and while the kids were holding hands, Duncan shot Dylan in the stomach with a 12-gauge shotgun. Shasta said she felt Dylan let go of her hand, looked over, and her brother was trying to hold his organs inside his body. Dylan fell on the ground and Duncan shot him in the head. Then Duncan made Shasta collect her brother's belongings, put his body on a tarp, and burnt Dylan's body in front of her. Eventually Duncan asked Shasta if she wanted to be strangled or shot to death. She chose strangulation because she was scared of going through what her brother endured, and she thought if she chose strangulation she could try to talk Duncan out of killing her. He wrapped a rope around her neck and Shasta asked him to please not kill her. He cried and asked her to be his daughter. He planned on bringing her to meet his family in Washington, but Shasta convinced Duncan to bring her back to her hometown of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, so she could show him where she went to school. They stopped at a Denny's where a waitress recognized Shasta and called the police. Shasta was immediately taken to a hospital where she was taken into surgery due to the trauma Duncan inflicted on her. Duncan was eventually found to have kidnapped, raped and murdered at least 3 other children before coming across the Groene family. He was given the death penalty but died of brain cancer in 2021. Shasta is married and has 4 boys and is pregnant with her 5th son. I pray she has nothing but love, peace and happiness in her life. I don't think there is anybody in the entire world more deserving than this amazingly strong, resilient and intelligent survivor. Rest in peace. Brenda Groene, Slade Groene, Dylan Groene, Mark Mackenzie, Anthony Martinez, Samieho White and her half-sister, Carmen Cubias.